is the topic. In fact, I decided to pick this topic myself. I decided to pick this topic myself because I find it so important, and also because it was part of my life. And I feel that it's time for everyone to become that. Now, let's go into the word multidimensional. What does it mean to you? Now, when I'm speaking, by the way, I just want you to know that please ask questions, type it out. I'm looking at the laptop, at the screen on the laptop, while I'm looking at the phone. Any questions, I'm going to try to answer on the fly. Hi, Richard. Welcome. And yes, so feel free. Just type, and I'm watching. Okay. Now, what is multidimensional? I'll look at definition here. Now, multidimensional implies the presence of more than one dimension, such as experiencing a film in 3D. Okay. Another definition of multidimensional, which is from the thinking point of view, is thinking about from multiple dimensions. And rather than simply taking a singular approach, a one approach. Now, when you do that in a multidimensional way, you approach things multidimensional way in thinking process, you go into deeper intellectual penetration, right? And also because being a multidimensional thinker allows us to think without relying heavily on framework. And this is what I do actually in everything, in my writing, in my any kind of work, even when I'm creating something. I do not allow myself to be confined by framework. Framework as in when you go for a course or program, you take in some of the practices and methodologies. I do that, but I allow myself to reflect on them, but have the confidence and freedom to flow and decipher my own way of interpreting that. Like I make myself like water in a river bank, and I allow myself to flow, and the structure of the river bank, the base of the river, the floor and the sides are the structure, the frameworks, but I allow myself to flow so that I do not get confined by the structure, but I am able to flow rapidly. And one thing is that as I allow myself to flow, there is a change that happens. The river bank also changes. The structure and the practices change because you come up with your own. So in that way, there's creativity. So being multidimensional brings out creativity. Governments are always talking about being, it's been a couple of years, many years now, but having creative people. Creativity really is about being multidimensional. So another aspect of multidimensional, I will say from the visual point of view, is like becoming a crystal. A crystal is multidimensional. A crystal has many sides. And the crystal can allow light to flow in, and it disperses more light. So there is a change that happens. So you allow information to come through, but when you disperse out, you release something different, perhaps something greater, and something unique. So this is how I look at multidimensional. And why is it so important right now? Wow, I mean, I think we know that we are, and societies and governments are all looking into creating people who are thinkers. But a thinker, really you have to look at it in one way, is that what kind of thinker? A multidimensional thinker is a kind of person who thinks beyond, above and beyond the structures that he is given. And he allows for that flow. Now, all that is just, sounds like theory. How do we practice it? First thing is through the awareness, which was what I mentioned. The awareness is one thing, okay? Just to know about it. Okay? Now, explained about the flow. Allowing yourself for the flow. And that's why I practice daily meditation. So I allow myself to flow. In fact, before I do any particular task, I would meditate probably for about 5-10 minutes. Any task. If I'm supposed to speak, I would meditate for 5-10 minutes. If I'm supposed to write something, I would just do a short meditation. I release that flow. I mentioned in another video how the energy, the Merkaba. The Merkaba is a geometry. It's a divine light vehicle. It centers around the heart. Okay. And also links to the DNA. I'll talk about the DNA now. The Merkaba is a divine light vehicle. Mer, light. Ka is a spirit and Ba is body. So when we allow for the Merkaba to spin the field in the heart, we allow for the flow. Meditation does that. When you go into prayer meditation, you're allowing for this spinning through the geometry within us and the flow to be released. That's one aspect of becoming a truly multidimensional being. We already are multidimensional, but it requires us to practice it and become it in life, in our daily life. So, yes, so that's one thing about the flow. Now, the other thing I would also want to mention is that all that, again, that is all that I mentioned about the awareness. Then the second point I mentioned is about allowing ourselves to flow and activating that through meditation with every activity that we do. Even mundane activities, a little bit of meditation, you go into that to activate the Merkaba, the heart as the highest electromagnetic energy it is the organ with the highest electromagnetic energy in the entire body. So we activate that. Now, the other thing of being multidimensional is that also, something which I've been practicing always is always allowing for information to come through to me. And constant reading. And not just reading anything, reading deep and books which actually make you think a little. Now, how often do we do that? Do we actually reflect and actually pick up books that make us test our minds? So that's another aspect of it. Actually, that's part of the activation. And doing that regularly. So being in an era where in social media and Facebook and all that, where everything is so simply placed in front of us, we don't allow ourselves to really discern and to really think and go deep into the information. Some of us do, but I would say that picking up text that makes us go beyond using the superficial layer of our mind. Now, that's what I want to talk about now, about the mind. The mind itself is multidimensional, and one way of saying it is multi-layered. There is this, I want to mention the scientist here, John Hagelin, PhD, Harvard. He's an American particle physicist. He made this claim that the mind is structured in layers, from superficial to profound. And if we use our mind at a very superficial level, we will have very limited power. To go beyond the superficial levels of our mind, we need to tap onto the layers within. So we are like an onion that has multiple layers. Our mind also has layers. Our personalities has layers. So tapping within those layers and being aware that that is essential part of the process. But as we go below, as we shed those layers, there is, like for example, for an onion, there is a pungent smell that's released. And the symbolism of that is that it can be difficult. I would say from a negative point, it's difficult and challenging as we go through the process. And we might find that process will actually affect our lives in some way. So the thing is to keep allowing ourselves to tap within the layers and keep going until we find more and release more and more of ourselves within. Now, I mentioned this in my book here, Through the Golden Door, you see here, page 174, a quote by John Hagelin. If we use our mind in a very superficial and ordinary manner, we can barely move a speck of dust across the tabletop without using our hands. Well, most of us, we are all like that right now. But as we progress and advance, who knows what we'll be capable of doing. Now, I want to talk about how an important part, which is also hydration in the right environment. I want to explain why. Hydration is also because we are at least 77% water. And because of the fact that we are mostly water, and going to the Dr. Emoto crystalline theory, when we have the optimal water in ourselves, we have the right vibrations when the environment around us affects us to a point. The people and the environment around us affects our crystalline nature at our cellular level. And what we are at the cellular level, the crystalline, if you look at the crystalline structure of the water, the clusters. Now, Dr. Emoto talks about how when the clusters are smaller, the longer the water will retain the memory. Okay? Now, if there is too much space in the cluster, other information could infiltrate within the space between the clusters, making it hard for the clusters to hold the integrity of the information. What this really means in layman terms is that at this cellular level, if our crystalline structure, the cluster, is tightly defined, tightly designed, because of high frequency, because of the right environment we're in, because of the food we eat, because of our state of our emotions, state of our being, a more beautiful, intricate design of the crystalline means less space within. It also means that we can retain more information in our cluster, within our cell. And when that happens, we can retain more information, retain more memory, and that is linked to intelligence, the supernatural intelligence, as so to speak. Now, so you wouldn't really imagine that intelligence, supernatural intelligence, would have something to do with the environment you are in, the state of your emotions, what kind of water you drink, how much water you have in your system, the hydration would have a link to your supernatural intelligence. And the supernatural intelligence is linked to being multidimensional. The crystal you become like a crystal, or more beautiful crystal, a refined diamond. So it's as simple as that. Yes, your environment. Now, the other point I want to mention is about how working on our DNA, working on our DNA and not working on our brain. Our brain is a storage device, but our DNA determines everything. Our DNA defines us. Our DNA rules us. Our DNA defines everything in us. Now, what I want to share is that the thing about the DNA, spoken in my book, in fact, to talk about the how 88% roughly or more, could be up to 88 to 90% or more, is a junk DNA, which is called junk because it cannot be read. It cannot be deciphered. It is like a black hole in itself. It is above and beyond what humans can actually understand. Now, that junk DNA, that black hole inside, is actually linked to the spirit. Okay, the spirit. Now, the spirit. I'll share a quote from Einstein. He talks about the field. The field is the core governing agency. The field is the spirit, the spirit. The spirit defines how our physicality, the spirit defines the state of our evolution. And to think of it, that is a greater proportion of our DNA. Now, with the DNA, there is the RNA. You're familiar with RNA? Okay? The RNA is like the biological messenger. It is the thing that actually defines or actually gives direction to the DNA. The RNA is linked to the spirit. Which is why when you actually spend time connecting to the spirit and expanding the spirit and connecting to the spirit of God, you will bring in the attributes of the Spirit of God into your DNA. The DNA is the blueprint, which gets redefined and redesigned and renewed with new information and new, like I said, new design, that it takes up a different form and makes you truly more and more and more multidimensional. As they say in religion, it's said that the Creator is omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. We become, that is a multidimensional aspect. So we become more and more connected to Spirit, which is in the greater proportion of our DNA. We become more and more multidimensional. Now, I hope that you've been able to grasp some of that, and I appreciate you listening in. Now, is this available to all of us? Of course. And yes, when this transfiguration starts to happen, we move from double helix DNA to triple helix and beyond. Multidimensional means that we not only multidimensional thinkers, but we also reside in a multidimensional space. So when we move from double helix is when we are in a three-dimensional state. We see everything in three-dimensional. But when we transfigure to become three-dimensional, we start to live or habitat in a four-dimensional realm. And it goes beyond that. So that's another aspect of multidimensional, which is living in that multidimensional habitat. If you say it from you could say the spiritual or religious point of view, that would be bringing that heavenly realm, habitating in that heavenly realm wherever you go and wherever you're doing, even you're doing the most mundane tasks, washing dishes, sweeping the floor, reading a book. You're always in that state. Because the realm of heaven is a multidimensional realm. It is not 3D as it is standard earth. Now, what I want to share is that the thing about the DNA is being aware that the DNA actually rules us, not the brain. Being aware that the DNA, because its majority of DNA is that space that is like quantum. It's at a quantum state. And anything at quantum state is infinite. It's free. It can go wherever it pleases. It can become whatever it pleases. And it's potent. So, working on ourselves within, you don't build yourself as being multidimensional, super intelligent by simply taking on lots of theory and best practices. Okay? Like I said, at the example of the riverbank, that gets shaped, but you have to allow for that flow, and the flow comes through when you connect to the spirit, and the spirit in the DNA. The Merkaba, which is geometry, allows that spin, the energy flow is the flow. The energy being released is the flow. So doing that in our lives, day to day, and really connecting with the spirit. It's so simple. I mean, I know it sounds all very, very profound, but we are supposed to go back to this. And we can actually become multi-talented. Become like at the time of the Renaissance, where you have the philosophers and the mathematicians and the artists. We go back and we break past the boundaries. The DNA is a quantum state. It doesn't have boundaries. It goes past the boundaries. So we work on it at a cellular level. And of course, we work on it on our day-to-day lives. When I do anything, I try to focus. I don't multitask. I tell you that. I do one thing at a time. I certainly don't reply emails or check my phones when I'm writing something. I would put it away. So the whole concept of being multitasking, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work if you want to be a multidimensional being. Do one thing at a time. You go in, really focus. It's like going into a tunnel and really going deep. Going deep so that you release the quantum state in yourself, which is already inherent in us. So, I want to thank you for listening in. I encourage you to read my books because anyway, it takes a little while to understand all these concepts and bring it into your own life. But one thing is that very important is to know. I'll give you an analogy. Why is it so important to know? It's like knowing is the beginning. If you know and you're willing to take on a belief, you make yourself receptive to those changes in your DNA. Now, if you always say, I know everything, and I already learned these things when I was a child, I mean, I was taught these doctrines when I was a child, you're not going to allow for those changes in your DNA because everything is happening now. Everything is at this moment. The past is over. You have to be receptive to new things now, new dimensions that are already in place, new energy that's already come in, the new version of ourselves which is ready to blossom, something which you never imagined. So you have to be ready for now and always say that you don't know, and so that you can receive more. And the knowing increases, and still the knowing has more to know. Now, once you know and you believe, and then you will one day see. And whatever your mind can perceive, you can conceive. You can conceive being truly multidimensional, truly super intelligent, truly multi-talented. Now, when you truly become one with the Creator, you become truly multidimensional, like a polished diamond. Is there an end state? I don't believe there's an end state. It's a continuum. It's a continuous state. There's no end, no beginning. When you end something, you start again. So it's a continuum. I have not stopped. I'll keep doing what I need to do. I keep reading, I keep receiving, and asking more and more and more and more. Have I arrived? No, I have not arrived. Am I arriving? Yes, we are always arriving, but we're always journeying. So I thank you very much. I just want you to know that it's important to start being aware and to change, adjust our belief systems so we can receive and understand that the door is there. But how are you going to open the door if you don't believe the door is there and go through it? So you have to start with that knowing and belief. Thank you very much. And any questions, please write the comments of what you feel and what anything that I've missed out. Because like I said, this is just a short 15-minute probably session. Feel free to ask me questions on the comments and send me a PM. And I encourage you to check my website, read my books, and there'll be updates there, tahiraamirkhan.com. And there will be a session, part 2 after this, where I'll cover another topic, rather briefly in fact, about 10 minutes from now. I thank you very much.